Welcome to Birds of a Feather, conversations about the relationships that determine our paths to success, who wins and who doesn't. My name is Jeremy. I'm co-founder of Feather, and today I'm joined by Margaux Miller, international speaker, TEDx presenter, and global community leader who spent the last decade designing connection at scale. Now, Margaux is really awesome. You've got nearly 20 years of experience as a master of ceremonies, which hits home for me because, like I mentioned when we first started talking, I was an MC for a long time too. However, you've been speaking to crowds in arenas with thousands of people from Dublin to Silicon Valley. You've been on TED Talks, and your featured TED Talk was actually how we connected, 6 ways to make better connections online. And it's influenced hundreds of thousands of people year after year. And Margaux guides these conversations and many others at the intersection of AI, quantum, startups, and community. So when we first connected, one of the things that really stood out to me was the challenge that you gave to me. And I want to bring that up as we get this going because I think it was really special. I'd reached out and I wanted to talk to you because I just was genuinely impressed by the way that you're thinking about things. And the first thing that you asked me is if I had listened to your TED Talk, and I did. And I went back through it again, and what I realized, what you were really kind of hinting at, the forest for the trees kind of approach here was like, hey, don't just reach out to me for reaching out, like be authentic, be you. And I really appreciate you holding me accountable, and that, hopefully was the start of a long-term friendship here. So thank you so much for being with us today. I know everyone's going to be in for a really special treat.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's always funny to have someone remind you of like the original reach out. You go, what did I do? What did I say? But I guess sometimes I do that because not all the time, but I do challenge people for sure to reach if they want to have a call with me. It's hard because a lot of us are all like self-described as very busy, right? We feel like our lives are really full. And to actually make a real relationship with someone, it does take a little bit of customization, a little bit of, telling the person something about them. And in your case, the reason I asked you specifically about that talk was because I could see on your profile and from what you kind of had indicated that you were someone who was interested in human connection. And I thought, look, like I have this thing right here that's exactly that you'd probably like. So, is that actually what you were just going to ask me on a call anyway, or do you want something more, And so it was just like nudging people to say, where can I help you? Because I'm happy to do it, but I need to understand why in advance. Because if I just said hi to everybody on a call, that'd be my life and I would have no money. I'd be, just happily having phone calls with people, which would be fun. But we also need to make a living.
Yeah, it's a little easier to do that now than back when we were younger because, if you had a calling plan, you wouldn't be able to be doing that. But anyway,
I'm dial-up internet. Yeah.
This is gonna be amazing. So I want to start off with you kind of mentioned this, the connecting to people and really actually connecting on things that matter and not just having conversations for the sake of conversating. But let's go and talk about a scenario where you're standing on stage in front of thousands of people. It's a massive global tech conference, and the energy in the room is really fired up, but it's hard to tell, because there's so many people and bright lights looking at your eyes, and whether that energy is amazing or not can really make or break that whole experience. So I'm curious to just kind of hear from you, like, what's that feel like, commanding a room at that scale?
It's funny because even just hearing you ask that question, I think, oh, it's just amazing. And I know not everyone likes being on stage, especially in front of really big audiences, but the bigger it gets, the less you can see people in the back of the room anyway, because to your point, there are lights in your face that are blinding after the 10th row. But to me, I'm kind of like, bring it on, the bigger, the better. Like, I can't wait until I'm doing massive arenas, At this point, thousands of seats in like a smaller arena are something that I am doing on occasion, depends on the event and the size of the event. I have one coming up in a couple of weeks in Brazil where it's a 2,000 seat room and they have this camera on a track, like you see like in a movie when they're filming an action scene. This camera moves on a track, like without a person in front of you, and kind of looks up at you as you're going on stage. And there's a band on the stage, and they play people off if they talk too long, kind of like Oscars style. So there are all these like fun environments like that, and to me, those things just give me more and more energy. Because I was listening to even a podcast today about keynote speakings. A friend of mine was on this show, and they said that we're missing people that really care in these environments now. Like a lot of people, and I don't know I don't want to get into that piece too much, but what it made me think of, and it relates to what we're saying here, is that I do care so much about the work that I do and how I present when I'm on stage. I want my client to be super happy at the end of the day, like the event organizer, the people bringing me in. I want the speakers that I'm introducing to feel amazing. And I want the audience to feel really engaged. So there's all these people that I want to make sure are really like engaged and happy. And when you're in a bigger room, it scales up for sure, but you're really doing the same job. It's kind of the same as a smaller event in the sense that like, you're going to pick people in the audience, you're going to speak to them, you're going to try and like know the audience well enough in advance so that what you say really can land. Asking like your client or who they expect to be there, the level of skill set, that kind of stuff. And then I try and just really speak like a human. Like I'm not up there with a perfect script, just like reading word for word, a very formal bio of somebody. I'm making it really relatable. I come from a tech background and like in tech companies, I'm mostly in human skill roles, community type roles, but in a tech environment. And so when I'm hosting these big tech events, I'm able to kind of help bridge that gap because even though our audience is usually incredibly intelligent, they don't know every single topic that's going to be on the stage deeply, right? So my job is to bridge that a little bit, make sure that people feel good about what's coming up next, feel like they can relate to it in some way, hopefully make them laugh a little bit, make them feel engaged, make that speaker look amazing, and then kind of get out of the way, right? And so no matter the size of the stage, you're still doing the same thing. I prep the same amount, basically, whether it's a small event or a big event, because I care, like I really take it seriously. And I think that just shows like even it's silly, but like I was getting excited just now, even telling you that answer, right? Because I can feel myself like in that environment, and it feels so, so good. So yeah, to me, I'm kind of like the bigger, the better, but also when it's small and you can like talk to the audience and people in front of you that can be really fun as well and do a little more like interaction from the stage. So, I could talk about this forever, but it's certainly a really exciting job that I get to do. And I'm really grateful to be in it.
I get so energized when people actually give a shit about what they're doing, and I can just like feel it through my bones how much you genuinely care.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is like what information superhighway, the fabric of technology and human giving a shit about other people, obviously focusing in on driving business outcomes and everything like that. And what's really interesting is, I guess like what I'm picking up from you is that it doesn't matter if it's that one-to-one conversation like you and I had just to start getting to know each other, or if you're talking to 2,000 people, you got to put in the time up front. You actually have to care. You got to go put in the effort to go get to know who is that other person, how are they going to receive this, and then how do you communicate to them on the level that they're going to receive the communication, which I think there's a lot of science. There's also a lot of art in that as well.
Yeah. Like you said, I do a lot of prep up front. And then there's this improv piece or this like caring while it's live too that really matters. I'd love to tell you a quick story. On the weekend, just now, there was International Women's Day. I was hosting an event for girls getting into STEM, like still grade 8 girls, trying to get them to take the right courses, to get into a university STEM program. And it was such an awesome like little challenge day. There were about 50 girls. So this is not the huge arena with tech gurus, but still within that kind of theme. And there was judging as part of this competition at the end of the day, right? And so they were testing their little prototype that they had made. It was really cute and just amazing to see their skills and their dedication. But so there was this one group that I was watching and their prototype didn't work the way they had when they practiced it. And so they were really upset. Like this young girl was crying a little bit even. She was really sad that her thing didn't work the way she hoped it would. She was a little bit embarrassed. And so in that moment, even because I do care and I want everyone to leave like feeling good at the end of this day, I went and quickly thought, okay, what can I tell these girls to say, what you're doing here matters whether you win or not, without just saying those words. So I quickly looked up and said, what kind of inventions exist now that are amazing, but started out as a total flop? And I found one, and it was sticky notes. Sticky notes was meant to be a super strong glue. It was meant to be like a super glue before Gorilla Glue existed. And instead they accidentally invented a really weak glue. But then someone realized it could stick the papers together and be removable. And now they have this like, multi-million-dollar business with Post-it notes, sticky notes that still exist today. It was 3M actually. And so I told the girls that story and I said, that prototype, that thing you're testing, the thing that goes wrong, like you never know what it'll become and it's part of the process. And so that was an impromptu thing in the moment, but it's because I saw the reaction and the tears and I changed what I was going to say. I didn't just like read the script the way it was. And that's a small example, but no matter your audience, that's what's important.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that is so important in today's automation world. And we're going to talk in a couple of minutes here about technology and authenticity and boundaries between those. There was a bunch of research that was done. I learned when we were first like figuring out Feather is that going from being like a connection to being a trusted relationship takes many hours of in-person togetherness. And I'm saying in person, underlying that, because you can't necessarily just offload that pivot to some machine. You do need to be able to go get out in front of people. You do need to be able to go get in front of the people and connect in a more meaningful way. And I think it's a really interesting, again, I was so excited to talk to you because I feel like that thesis that we have, which is like, hey, tech can help us to go and maybe identify some of these at bats and show up faster, maybe scale some of the handwritten note, but like shouldn't write the note for you. Really aligned with your TEDx talk, which I thought was really disruptive and from an idea standpoint, and it's called Connect, Don't Collect. And I'd love to maybe just get your thoughts, and for everyone that's listening, like why that principle is so counter in today's world, because we're all in many ways benchmarked against how many followers we've got, how many hashtags we're a part of, or, how many of different things, like taking that photo of that amazing trip with your family and being able to see how many shares and comments and stuff like that. But, in today's world, like tell us a little bit more about why Connect, Don't Collect really matters.
Really matters. Yeah. That was the first of my tips in my TEDx talk, which is called 6 Ways to Make Better Connections Online. That's the first way to do it. So thank you for calling that one out. I can speak to it from, research and from experience, but it is framing that, like you say, is so important. We all can think of examples where we're getting weekly messages in our LinkedIn inboxes that are so clearly a repeated copy paste message, right? And, I sent one to someone recently where they had in their profile that they loved cheese. They were they had a professional job in tech, but they also loved cheese. And I wrote them a message, and one of the first things I said was, hey, I've actually been eating my eggs in the morning with blue cheese in them. And I know it sounds weird, but it makes my eggs so much better. And I thought maybe you'd want to try it because you have this cheese thing in your profile. And I know that's weird, but also I'm reaching out to you for this tech event. And the person, it was, I used even an in-mail, so I didn't have actually access to them. This wasn't even an actual message with someone I was already connected with, so totally cold. And the person was excited to receive my response and answered me quickly. And that was because I actually wanted to connect with that person and took a minute to read their profile and write that out. Now, that only took me 2 minutes longer than copy pasting a standard email. So, okay, it was longer, but not that much longer, maybe 5 minutes. Okay, by the time I read it and thought of what I was going to say. But when you connect with someone like that, that true sense of human relationship building, it's exponentially more valuable for you. I truly believe, even when we talk about follower count, I truly believe that the more vulnerable you are, the more real you are, the more, relationship focused that you are, real human relationships that are meaningful, the more followers and connections you're actually going to have, because people can vouch for you. People see that you're caring. And even like when you're posting outwards, right? If you're posting on your LinkedIn or somewhere else to get that attention, when you write in a way that's more personal too, and you're not just using AI, that again helps build relationships, because people actually have something to respond to where they feel like you're actually reading it and going to write back. So, certainly follower counts and business cards and things like that are a thing that we feel like is important, especially earlier in our careers. And some teams do benchmark you on how many new reach outs you have and things like that. But I actually think those sales teams should reconsider and should actually look at, are people mushrooming business because they have a relationship that's really strong and doing a certain amount of reach outs, but not just a certain amount of reach outs, right? So, I have examples where I've done this wrong, where I wrote something that I thought was personalized and actually it was really poorly written. And the person kind of went, did you send this to everybody? And so a lot of us have made mistakes along the way. I hope we just can go look at one of our messages and reread it and see where we're actually at and rewrite it. Or even if you just did that last week and you're like, oh, that person was important. I missed my one chance. go reach out and apologize. Just write back and say, hey, I see I sent you that message. I'm rereading it now. It sounded pretty generic. I did actually try and write it personally, but realizing I must have been in a rush and didn't. It really matters for me to meet you. Here's what I actually care about. Like, you can still go fix it, And so it's just so important that we build off of a sense of meaningful connection, because people know nowadays, and it's getting more and more important to do that as AI and tech tools make things faster for us. And I think I would give you another tip with that, which is use those tools to help you prepare for those conversations and write a better message, but more to do the research side of it. And I know we're going to get into AI in a little bit here, so I can help give some more tips there, but certainly connect, don't collect. You will see huge value and return when you come to relationships from a place of wanting to invest and truly connect with people rather than just scratch off a number on your list.
Yeah, I want to go back to something I heard you say in there, which is that, we kind of are collecting a lot of these followers and people and relationships. And what I'm interpreting here is that we might be mistaking that for that as access for real relationships, something that is quality, something that means something. And a lot of, especially in sales, that's the background that I got. I got 15 years in enterprise software sales, and it is very much, have you done this amount of things? And the tools are making it easier to do more of that amount of things, but we're starting to lose our authentic human effort and human us. Now, to your point about like, can it help scale us? I think so, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
I just feel like there's that. Like, how is ChatGPT going to know that you're cooking your eggs with your blue cheese? I mean, maybe at some point.
Or whatever the weird customization is to that next person. Yeah, unless you're talking to it every minute of every day, no, it won't know those little things. You have to do that.
And even if it does, right? Like, that still takes effort to connect the dots with the things that matter the most to people. And it's really interesting. Like, I think that, I can't count how many times I've gotten emails where it's obviously a lead service, broker service that they picked off a list, and they, did a quick URL search, looked at the website, called the wrong feather, because there's another feather that does, what's it called? Furniture. So if you want some feather furniture, you could go find them. Called me by the wrong name, said the wrong thing, and you kind of just get out of the gate and already lose the opportunity that way. So I feel like it's really important for us to go and continue to put in the effort. But I do have a question for you on that front, right? So like, there is a need. I've always taught quality, quantity, consistency in terms of outreach. You need to balance those things. You can't just do lots of shitty outreach. You can't just do one, right? And you can't do it one time. You got to have a good balance. So how do you think about it when you're, building outbound and communication to people and scaling your networks? Like, how do you balance those?
Yeah, in terms of like using AI or tech tools and then that human piece, right?
Yeah. Like how do you find a balance across them?
Yeah. Quick answer is I tend to use it more for research and prep rather than actually completing the task. So that's kind of quick answer. But, maybe there's an example I can give that kind of helps surface it too. I tell this story often now that in the fall, I was at this big event in Dubai. And when I got there, they told me I was going to share the stage with an AI avatar. Like, it was going to be up there, on stage with me. And technically it was impressive. What it actually was able to do was listen to 8 hours of content, basically the whole content on the stage that day, every person that presented as I was introducing them and all of their keynotes. And then it was able to take all that information and distill it into a 3-minute update at the end of every day that told people everything they missed on the stage that day. Now, I can't do that, right? I can't take 8 hours and distill it into 3 minutes fast and easily when I'm distracted and the people talking to me backstage and I'm doing, right? It's not possible as an MC. But, my first fear was like, can this thing take my job? And the answer absolutely is no, because it can't land a joke in the audience. It can't understand like what people are doing in real time, or if someone's late to really notice and play with the room accordingly. That story we told earlier of adjusting on the fly, technically it could do that, but does it understand the human emotion enough of that girl who's crying to know to make that change, right? Like, It's just not so easy. And so I think that kind of, in a way personifies this idea that it has certain features that we absolutely should be using. If it could give me that 8-hour distillation and then give it to me in some script that I could then look through and use, amazing. But do I want it actually hosting the stage all day where there's a connection with the audience? No, it still feels kind of cold and kind of robotic, right? Like it's not there yet. So luckily for me. But so that kind of shows you there's like two sides to this, right? And you don't want it to do everything for you, because that example over there of if it took my whole job, it wouldn't work, right? So I think it's incredible for research, incredible for prep. I have a prompt, for example. Here's a great one you can start doing today. Write a list of questions that you would want to know the answers to in advance of a meeting with someone. So say the first time Jeremy and I meet, I'm like, who is this guy? What's Feather? Are they doing anything cool? Like, are they in the news? Should I know something that I don't find because we're from different countries, or something? And I just don't see it in the news that Feather's doing something really cool. What does he actually care about versus what his company cares about? All these things. And I have this list of about 15 questions in different kind of categories. I put that prompt in one time. I have like a custom chat or a thread or however you want to do it. You could create a custom GPT. And then every time I have a new person I'm about to get on a phone call with, I can just type in their name and where they work and say, go. I don't have to rewrite the questions. And it just quickly will search the internet and their LinkedIn and their social medias and give me all of those answers. And I've taught it to say, like, if you don't know, don't make it up. Just skip that question. So then I can see their background, their recent work. Maybe they were on a podcast and I can listen to it in advance. It's efficient, it's useful, but then I'm still the one going into the phone call and making the real human emotional relationship. I'm just doing it now with way more depth of information. So, if Jeremy wants to talk about the cheeses he loves, I've got an anecdote ready about my eggs that I can give him because I did a little tiny bit of research in advance. So basically AI in that example can help show that you paid attention, show that you care, show that you did a little bit of research, and it's going to do it really fast for you. It does save me a ton of time versus if in the past I would have done Google research to figure all that out myself about Jeremy. It would have been way slower and I probably wouldn't have done it all, right? Because we are all busy people. We don't have time to do hours of research before every phone call we have to figure out maybe if that guy is good or girl is going to be useful for us, right? So I think it's about this message that yes, use AI, use the technology, but not for pieces that you want to really do and land yourself. And, give it your voice in advance, teach it about you in advance so that it pulls out the best information for you and can prepare you for those human interactions where it still really matters for you to show up.
Yeah, you are just so spot on with that. And I was talking to my wife about this. I may have even mentioned this on a couple of the conversations. This is a common thread that comes up, which is where is the line of this being, acceptable or this being potentially dangerous for conversations and for people. And I really think that if you hit send, and you are the person who determines the quality and that you want to do this and that you opt into that conversation, you opt into that relationship and you don't automate it end to end, why wouldn't you want to have more thorough research done up front? Think about how that means for the other person on the opposite side of the conversation. They're going to get a better experience because you're coming more prepared, because you're showing more genuine curiosity. And, this conversation came up while I was at a networking event with our law firm and a couple of, their mutual customers. And they were saying well, is this something that, are you kind of blurring the lines of, what you should be doing, what you should be doing? And what I found was that even in romantic relationships, if you're going to go out on a date with somebody, you probably want to know a little bit about them. Maybe you go check out their Instagram and see if, do they like traveling? It takes effort. By the way, that effort shows when that other person is there.
And if you don't have that time for prep, then just lead with curiosity. Ask a lot of questions, just side tip from the tech conversation, just being a human. I think we're taught to sell ourselves all the time now with social media. We're always saying, I'm doing this and this is what's going on in my life, right? And I think just need to take a little more time to be a little more curious, a lot of us.
100%.
It's a skill to practice.
100%. And by the way, those create magic moments and real connection with people where, you remember and you feel something, which is great. And so it's a perfect segue into one of the questions I was curious to get your thoughts on. Like, so when you think of some of these very advanced and sophisticated technology topics that you're representing and in conversation with AI and quantum computing, other emerging tech areas, like you still focus on the human aspects. Like it rings true in all the way that you show up. How do you think this is going to turn out? So let's like fast forward a little bit, right? You mentioned that event in Dubai was amazing. I was literally just talking about like a robot might show up to the sales call at some point. I might be talking to a robot, right?
Yeah, people are saying that a likeness of you will do the call for you and then report back if it's actually worth you having a second call with that person.
Yeah, what do you think is going to actually happen with technology and this the need for human authenticity? How does that coexist in the future?
I mean, the first thing I'll say is that I'm not a futurist. I'm not someone who is actively trying to predict the future of what's happening with all of these tools. But I do think about it, in my industry, that example I just gave, is this avatar going to take my job kind of question? And so we all, I think, probably are thinking about it in some ways like that. And I would say that my main prediction in the world that I'm in, like my industry, my space, is that I do believe that us humans are going to more and more crave human interaction. Like I'm seeing a lot of big events, major conferences, lose budget, cut things, get tighter. I'm hoping to see this turn around because I do believe that we want to meet people in person to solidify those relationships, to meet new potential clients or partners or vendors, right? Because there is so much like fake content or, AI written content that we don't know whether to trust that a company and a person has all of these skills and abilities to give us the outcomes that we want when everyone can write the same thing online now, fake use cases, all these things, because they're using the same tool. And again, if we remember, AI is a prediction algorithm tool, right? It's predicting the thing. And if you don't give it a ton of background, it's predicting the most generic, like the most likely answer that it thinks the broadest group of people will want. So people are going to start to sound very similar. So, first of all, do that customization in your own AI tool so that it doesn't sound like everybody else. But here, when we're talking about, these predictions, I think we're going to see more and more people wanting to have in-person gatherings. Flights and stuff are pretty expensive right now around the world. I'm hoping to see more people like getting on them again, because even though we can do video calls, which is a really good alternative, like get an actual face-to-face video call with someone, I do think that to build that trust, those moments of in-person connection and big events gathering people in that way are going to remain important and maybe even become more and more important.
Yeah. And look, like to do a massive customer kickoff with 50,000 people, it's expensive, but it's a marketing expense. It's an opportunity for the company to go connect with their followers and fans and people. And I think it's so interesting because those events will get cut if they don't generate an ROI. But there's no better way to stand out right now than to actually shake someone's hand in person and get to know that person and build the trust. It's funny, I was having this conversation with a guy he's a Fortune 100 recruiting expert. He's been around the block for 3 decades, lived all over the world. And he was forcing me to think about what Feather really meant when I first started, because it's very easy to kind of just continue going. And one of the things that I found at least helped me, especially in the age of the digital relationship, is just setting up a get to know you meeting. Like, hey, let's not actually talk about this work outcome. Let's set the outcome to just get to know each other. And that's really
cool. Great idea. Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me about, what do you like? Who are you? Right? What are the things that are important to you? And what's really interesting about that is I think you get more out of that when you could sense people in person. Like you were saying that story earlier, right? But you could still do that digitally. And yeah. I think that it's so critical for us to maintain and develop those connections and continue to invest in them. And when you do these big events, Margaux, I was curious, like, how do you, after the fact, manage the relationships? Because I'm sure you've probably met a lot of people. Like, how do you manage the Rolodex yourself?
Yeah. It's actually a really tough question. And I would say that I'm getting better every month, every day, but that I'm still not perfect. I think that, so just to give like a bit of a picture of what I might do or what happens. So say I'm at a conference and it's 3 days long and I have incredible connections. I'm backstage meeting a lot of people. Maybe I exchange contact info with 20 people that feel genuinely promising, not even necessarily from a business perspective, but I just really liked them and I want to stay in touch with them. Hopefully we add each other on something like LinkedIn. I like a social media platform of some kind because then hopefully they pop up for you. And at least that kind of gets you sometimes to connect with each other. But oftentimes people do that and then they just go quiet. Like the business cards go in a pile and they don't even do something with them, right? Or they connect on LinkedIn at like rapid pace. I see people literally, sometimes people come up to me after the event and I've never met them. Like I haven't talked to them. I've just been on the stage, right? And they're like, hey, can we LinkedIn connect? Okay, thanks. And then they walk away. And I'm like, what was the point of that? They don't even know me. Like they could have talked to me, right? Most people don't follow up. It's just this weird desire for social media connection. But I think if you think of it like a plant where you just like potted a seed, right? You did the hard part. You put it in the soil, you planted it, right? But if you walk away and you don't water it, that's on you, And so a couple tips, like I would say the window matters. I try and follow up when I like get into bed that night or like, have some downtime finally when I'm off the stage and away from it, where anyone I connected with that day, I will at that point usually copy paste a message, which like I'll try and customize if I have time. But if they're people who like quickly connected with me, then what I'll do is I'll start with a copy paste and I'll say all the details of where we met. And this is the reason it's okay at this point to do it and that you'll follow up after. It's something like, hey, Jeremy, so great to meet you at ABC conference today, right? Or yesterday. If you didn't get to it right away, you can do it on your flight home or whatever, right? So great to meet you today at this full event name. Don't just say today at the event. Because then a year later, when you try and find them, you're not going to remember because our Rolodexes get big these days, right? So at this specific event, and then ideally you add a little custom phrase for anyone that meant a little more to you than that quick connect version I gave you. So something like, hey, Jeremy, so good to connect at ABC event today backstage. It was great to talk to you briefly and see the picture of your dog. Look forward to staying in touch, right? And by the way, dictate that. It's so much faster. If you're going to customize them, I use Whisperflow, a fantastic AI tool for dictation. I'm sure there's others, but this one's really, really good. And then that's your like first step, right? So already a lot of people don't do that part. And then you go rack your brain later. Who was that person I met backstage? They were cool. They worked at some kind of company that does connection, and you can't find them because you don't remember the keywords. But if your keyword is the event name and the year, sometimes if I know I'm going back again, is already in your inbox, you can search that and boom, the 10 people you connected with will pop up and oh yeah, it was Jeremy. That was his name, right? So step number 1, just do that. That's already a huge game changer. Now I have a spreadsheet. I do not pay for a custom big CRM yet. I have an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet, and I have a bunch of columns, more than what makes me comfortable. But for the people that I think are actual like potential partnerships, collaborations, something like this we might do, or they might be able to book me for an event of some kind, they go into the spreadsheet. I copy their LinkedIn profile, their email address if I have it. I have a column of the last time I actually connected with them. And that column I just keep pushing to the side, always with the date first, so you can quickly see. And then I have another column that does have conditional formatting. So in Excel, you can do, or Google Sheets, you can do conditional formatting, meaning like that column, I only put a date in and I use the actual date field, not just typing text. I have like a field in there. And when it gets within a week of that date, the whole column gets highlighted. So it's a bit of like a CRM hack where, okay, if I meet Jeremy and he says, call me in March because maybe we can do a podcast then I'll put March 1st in that column. When it gets close, it gets highlighted. I have this big sheet with too many names now, which is a little bit overwhelming, but at least every once in a while, names get highlighted and I go, okay, it's time to follow up. And I read the column beside it that says he wants to put me on a podcast. Okay, great. And then we follow up. That didn't actually happen with Jeremy and I, but that's just an example. So like, that's a lot to take in. I know I speak fast and I'm getting through it, but I just am trying to give you these like quick tips. I think the other big thing when you're doing follow-up is send something that actually is valuable to that person. So if the example with Jeremy wasn't a podcast, but it was just like, he seems cool, we're both doing things in community and human connection, so I just want to stay in touch with him, then I would maybe try and find a recent article I read or a podcast I listened to that I think Jeremy would find interesting And then I send that to him as a sort of, hey, was thinking of you. Here's something I think you might like, hope you're doing well. Because maybe there's no action item between us, but I want to like keep it warm. That's a really good tip for that. Send something that would be helpful to that person.
I love it. I think the main takeaway is just having a system, being systematic about it, because it's so easy to have these like sparks start to happen and then they just don't go anywhere. And it's like, whether you forget about them, we get busy, life happens. It's so easy, especially when you start to scale that up and you've got a plane flight you got to catch from Dubai back to Canada, and it's and sleep a little bit, right? I want to end with one more question so everyone can really get to know you for a second. You obviously have so much going for you. You've got the vibrancy, your clock speed is at max. You are a human connector. You are human oriented in your technology and tech savvy. Like, where did this all start from? Like, bring us back a little bit. How did you become this maverick across these different areas?
Wow, so fun to hear yourself described that way. Jeremy, I think I was lucky in that I always was a people person. Like I drew energy from being around other people. We would call that person an extrovert. I had that, which is certainly helpful. And then I was lucky that I had a family, my parents, that instilled in us a sense of curiosity. My mom was a school teacher. My parents took us to live in Australia for a year when I was 14. So they instilled that kind of worldliness, that ability to meet people that maybe are different from you and make relationships, and, threw us into that scenario at a young age. So all of those things, I think, chip away at, making you who you are. And there's probably some more like that I can give more examples, but I always enjoyed, putting on a little show, doing like a dance, like a, song or something in front of the family. That was always my personality. And so I started young with, doing maybe an acting class or something. And then, actually when I was 18, I was the voice of a cartoon. So I got comfortable with being, behind a microphone. Because some people, as soon as they get behind one of these, get nervous, right? There's something called being mic shy. It's literally a thing. So I got lucky that I did all that stuff young, and it kind of, it built me up to who I am. The worldliness too, and being able to talk to different people at different levels. We have a family cabin in the woods, and we would be out there with, a bunch of my parents' friends, no kids, because we were kind of a little bit older than their friends having kids. And so we'd be at a dinner table full of adults, and we would talk to them, and we never knew, we were none the wiser that maybe that was a dynamic difference in intelligence, something that we should be weary of. Like, we just felt always like people, I think, that could talk to anyone and make friends with anyone. And so all of those things, I think, end up being really beneficial. And then I think I just became this connector, this community builder by accident. Like, it was just something that was innate. And so I'm very lucky in that way. But I will say that all of these skills can be practiced. Like I said a minute ago, I didn't have that Excel spreadsheet a year ago, even, or 2 years ago. Like, even though I was doing all this, I thought I could just mentally keep on top of it. And you can't, right? It gets eventually away from you, because we are doing a lot of things and we meet a lot of people these days, especially with the power of these social media tools, which are something we should totally take advantage of to meet people, like each other, who are not in the same city, and form these great relationships. But it also means it can be harder to do that follow-up. So all of that is practiced. I am comfortable on a stage today because I started young and started chipping away. Like, I did that cartoon and things like that. I had a podcast, not that different from this, interviewing founders of startups for 3 years. So I just keep practicing. And people today go, how do you become a professional MC? Like, that's a crazy job. How do you do that? And I don't have a good answer for them a lot of the time, because the answer is, it just started at step one, and I took one foot in front of the other until today. And then if you do something enough, it builds enough and you get good at it, just like anything else. And it's a lame answer, but it's like, go do it for free for now, start practicing, and then one day, you'll be there. It's just a progression over time.
That's awesome. It's awesome getting to know you and peeling back the layers a little bit to hear how this has all come together. I'm not shocked to hear the extrovert and the seat at the table and being able to show up with people of all different kind of thought patterns. I could definitely appreciate that. So this has been just delightful. Margaux, thank you so much for being a part of it. Before we wrap up, for anybody who'd like to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yes, awesome. I am active on LinkedIn. We've been talking about that today. It is a great tool, so find me on there. My name's Margaux Miller. I'm sure the name will be on here somewhere, but if you're just listening, my first name is spelt a little crazy. It's Margaux, so it's a French way, and then Miller is pretty easy. And my website is Speak with Margaux, spelt that same way, speakwithmargaux.com. And I'm on Instagram, Margaux A. Miller, little A in the middle there. And that's the same with a lot of my other social media platforms. So hopefully you're able to find me. And at very least, speakwithmargaux.com, you'll find all of those different links to reach me elsewhere. But definitely do, if you reach out, just give me a little note. Tell me how that you listened to this episode so I know how you found me. And I would love to hear from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So yeah, this has been Birds of a Feather. And of course, we are building at the intersection of technology and human connection. And so if you'd like to see what we're up to, head over to www.feather.vip. My name is Jeremy. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll catch you next time.